Well,
It deserves.
so something that we did too. We had a driver that was helping us. He was one of the trainees there. Um and I we you went we went to Applebee's. And I I I was so surprised that we were able to find something like that at that point in time, because usually in Pittsburgh in that area you can't find shit, and we were really looking. And lo and behold, Applebee's was open.
You got to experience in that one night how much fun it can be when you're on the road, and then you leave after a show and everywhere is closed when you're trying to get food. I don't know how we used to do it before the smartphones. That was
Right.
really crazy. Trying to find hotels and food, and try to find our fucking way to the next town. Even like it's amazing that we used to be able to do all that shit.
Man, it is unbelievable. When you were saying that food is so tough to do, and working finding time to work out and everything like that when you're on the road like that.
Oh
It's
yeah. Yep.
holy shit. Well,
Yep, gotta give up something. Some of the boys will give up sleep for it, like Bob Holly. Someone like that that's really intense, and
yeah.
like what's his name, Mister S.
Oh,
Like
Billy Gunn.
yeah, that dude. Like those guys, I can see them going to bed at 2 in the morning and still getting up at 7 to fucking hit the gym because they're not going to miss a workout. But usually you got to give up something and learn how to balance.
The balance is key. It is key. I especially if you're doing that shit. Um, but like, so what happened too is when I was talking to him earlier, I won't say his name, but before we met up, I was like, "Oh, you can maybe get some input from Rob or anything like that." Well, he never really said anything, and so, but when you went to the bathroom, Chris was like, "Hey, you should ask RVD any questions or anything like that," and he was like, "Yeah, maybe," but you could tell he was kind of nervous about it. He's a newer kid and everything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to just get your perspective from it. If he was to ask you something, how or to the level of like how would you how do you approach that when that happens, when somebody like, because there a lot of the younger talent is intimidated or kind of like uptight and little things like that. Would you encourage something like that to for them to do so if he took the moment to kind of pick your brain a little bit, so to speak, during those times? Or how do you feel about all that kind of
I think unless he had any specific questions, that it would be awkward to just try to open up the floor for discussion on anything and assume that I feel like talking about it. You know what I mean? Like
sure.
it's weird when like at signings, sometimes people will say that, they'll just be like, hey man, what would you say to someone that that wants to be a wrestler? It's like, God, that's so vague,
Yeah, that's very, very vague.
so I gave him a vague answer, whatever's on my mind. Thought questions changed for me. That's part of being one of a kind. It is one of the many things that I've noticed that's different about myself when I study the
Mhm.
status quo or the basic thinkers. I don't really have a lot of like favorites that stick out in my mind as favorites. So when people want to know, I don't think I have like a favorite color, and like if you ask me what my favorite movie is, it's probably going to change. I go with
Sure. Yeah.
Casino a lot of times, but other times I might give a different answer. And it's not that I'm lying, but at that point, that's what comes to my mind. And it's like, so, when, if someone just says, hey, any advice for someone starting out, I just say, make sure ask yourself what you're doing it for, what the reason is, and then remember that because someday you might have to fall back on that. You might have to ask yourself, what the fuck am I doing this for? And then you already got your reason. And if it changed, if it stayed the same, that might help you out. But that's circumstantially it could be anything.
Absolutely. And like,
It could be, dude, lose some fucking weight. You're 800 pounds, bro.
it could be any of those. And no, it's I think too, like even just that basis kind of thought process of like, hey, just look at it from that foundation is like, okay, that's a good start. And like, to where you kind of launch off and go from there. But yeah, it's like to your point though, it's like it would be tough to be in that position and be like, okay, I'm just gonna ask this guy a question that, I'm
Yeah.
driving around and certain things like that. Yeah. It'd put a little awkward there, I think too.
Yeah, unless there's something really specific, you know what I mean?